This is St. George Greek Orthodox Cathedral in Greenville, South Carolina. It is the first Orthodox church I ever saw or attended. I saw this building for years, maybe a decade before I attended my first Divine Liturgy. The architecture is striking and beautiful. This Byzantine style is unlike anything else in this area. It is obviously based on a historic style, but it was like nothing I had seen before. For a long time before I first visited, I was curious about what this church is like. I knew it had to be traditional, but I didn't have any idea what to expect. Almost every Orthodox church is built so that the altar is pointed to the east. We are currently viewing the church from the southwest. Every angle you view this building from is striking and dramatic. I think this is possibly the most beautiful church in Greenville. But besides that, the unique architecture suggests this is something more than just another church. When I was in the pit of despair at North Hills, this and any other beautiful church, but especially this one, spoke to me. I always wanted something deeper, something rooted in history. What I want to say is that this architecture reflects millennia of church history, and that's something my starving soul was craving before I became Orthodox. This is a big part of why I'm a huge proponent of beauty. I think everything should be beautiful, but especially sacred architecture should be beautiful. If this was some hideous building that looks like a shopping center or a warehouse, I would have driven past it and never noticed.
All right, we're coming at you in glorious full HD right now, and we're inside the nave at St. George Greek Orthodox Cathedral in Greenville, South Carolina. This is the first Orthodox church that I ever attended, and I'm here on a bright, beautiful, and swelteringly hot Monday, the last day of June 2025, and I want to show the church, and I'm going to talk about things, features, and design elements that are common for almost every Orthodox church, as well as some unique features, unique for this specific church, as well as unique for Greek Orthodox churches in America. So, if you'll bear with me, we'll get started. I just mentioned that we're inside the narthex. I hope I said narthex earlier and not nave. The nave is the part that you can see through the windows here, looking down the aisle there, but we're in the narthex, and there's some really beautiful wood furnishings here, and we're going to talk just a little bit about that. Now, for an Orthodox church, and probably also a Catholic church or a Lutheran church or an Anglican church, anything that is traditional and liturgical, you're going to see a structure that's laid out in a roughly similar way. Although coming from a non-liturgical Protestant background, we didn't have this kind of stuff. But anyway, getting back to the story, the narthex is kind of a transitional space from the secular world to the sacred. So the narthex in this church is a little bit different than it might be in another Orthodox church, but there are a lot of things that are still roughly the same. We have some like candle desks where you can make donations, you can buy a candle. In a lot of Russian churches, they don't have like this ecclesiastical sandbox. I don't know what this is actually called. I feel kind of stupid for saying that, but in a lot of Russian churches I've been in, you have like a candle stand, and there are places where you put your candle, and there is actually one of those downstairs, so hopefully I can show that later in the video. But this is, I guess you could call this a candle stand, but it has sand, and you put your candle in the sand. That's actually a really smart idea, because if candles burn down, they're not going to catch anything on fire. Also, while we're here, look at this beautiful ornate carving. I absolutely love that. And it's rich symbolism, and coming from 4 bare walls and a projector screen that comes down out of the ceiling, this is a massive improvement. Another thing that's really common in Orthodox churches is these icon shrines here. And You're going to see in almost every Orthodox church, although in a lot of churches you'll find these icons, like the patron of the church and the Mother of God, located in the nave towards the front, like in a Russian Orthodox church. I've been to lots of Russian Orthodox churches, but you will find these icons either in the narthex or in the nave. So here we have an icon of St. George, the patron of this church, and check out this ornate work here. This is really beautiful. And then on the other side we have the Mother of God. And when you go into an Orthodox church, the normal routine is to pray, say some prayers, light a candle, venerate the icons. Maybe I'll make a video about that, but right now we're just going to walk right into the church. Okay, we're now in the nave of the church. This is the first Orthodox church I've ever been in, and this is what I saw the first time I went in here. And I'm sorry, I can't think of what I was going to say, and I'm just saying a whole lot. The style of this building is a Byzantine basilica, and it is cruciform. So we're going to talk about that for just a minute. Also, we have something that I was going to say and forgot about. As you walk down the nave, there is a dome with Christ and the Old Testament prophets surrounding him. This is a pretty common feature in an Orthodox church, to have a dome like this. This specific icon is called the Pantocrator. It's very common in Orthodox churches all over the world. You'll find iconography similar to this, although it may be in a different style. Then around the dome, you have a structural feature called a pendentive, and it is this space between the columns and the dome. And in the pendentives, in most Orthodox churches, you're going to find iconography depicting the four gospel writers: John, Luke, Mark, Matthew. And I probably rotated in the wrong direction. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Then around in the apse, you can see that is the semicircular space in the back of the church. You see a very large icon of the Mother of God, and surrounding her is, and by the way, in front of her you see Christ is kind of superimposed, and then surrounding that is all the apostles plus Christ at the top. So in case you don't know what we believe in, you can just take a quick look and see. Also, I mentioned this is cruciform, so you can see it is shaped like a cross, and maybe I will take a screenshot of Google Earth so you can see. Right here we have a bishop's throne and some chairs. These are Byzantine-style chairs. And in a yet unpublished video, I talk about pews and chairs. We're going to talk about both of those two things. And this stand right here is where the chanters chant the Byzantine music. On the other side, you have the pulpit where the gospel is read or where a sermon is given. And then this wall of icons here is called an iconostasis. It's like an icon screen. Above the center doors, which are called the royal doors, you have the wedding feast of Cana. And then along the top here, you have scenes from the life of Christ. So you're going to have, let's just go ahead and walk up here and have a quick look at it. This, by the way, is totally unscripted, and I'm just going off what I can remember. All right, so this first icon, can I zoom in? Yes, I can. All right. That is the Mother of God
and her parents, St. Joachim and Anna, dedicating her to God. She spent her life in the temple. And this second panel is the Annunciation. That is where the angel Gabriel came and visited the Virgin Mary and said that she was going to be the Mother of God. And the third panel is the Nativity of Christ, so that should be pretty self-explanatory. Next is the circumcision of Christ, which might sound kind of icky if you're Protestant, but we celebrate that in the Orthodox Church, and a reason why we celebrate it is because Christ came to earth and became man and suffered in the flesh and experienced life as a human, although also being divine, and like that is something that's really hard to wrap your brain around, but that's what we believe and that's what happened. So moving on to the next panel, we have the baptism of Christ in the Jordan River, which I would love to go to the Jordan River. That would be such an awesome pilgrimage. Next, you have the Transfiguration on Mount Tabor, another awesome place I'd love to go see. The resurrection of Lazarus. Then you have the triumphal entry in Jerusalem. Here we are in front of the royal doors. Let me zoom back out. Oh, I'm zooming in. Now I'm zooming out. There we go. In front of the royal doors. And here is the wedding feast here, or that may be the mystical supper or the Last Supper, but the wedding feast at Cana is also used. Okay, now we're going to zoom back in to the crucifixion of Christ, the taking down from the cross, the resurrection, the women, the myrrh-bearing women finding the empty tomb, then this is Christ revealing himself to St. Thomas, and then the ascension, the glorious ascension, Pentecost, and the descending fire of the Holy Spirit. And then lastly, the dormition of the Mother of God. Then around the icon screen, and this is nearly universal for every Orthodox church. To the right of the royal doors, you have the icon of Christ, and to the left you have the Mother of God. And then to the right of Christ, you have, in almost every Orthodox church, every one that I've ever seen, an icon of St. John the Baptist. And he's always depicted with angel's wings. Then to the left of the Mother of God, you have the patron of the church, which in this case is St. George. Now these doors here, these panels here, to the left of St. George and to the right of St. John, these are actually doors that can open. They're called deacons' doors. Acolytes and deacons go in and out these doors during different parts of the service. And the first time I saw that, I thought it was really cool. Because like from the vantage point of a person who's never been in an Orthodox church before, seeing this wall of icons and one obvious door in the middle, these were almost like secret doors, so seeing them open for the first time was pretty amazing. These icons here are extras. They can be chosen by the church, whoever wants to put different icons in, but the ones that I mentioned, you always have Christ to the right of the door, the Mother of God, St. John the Baptist, the patron of the church, and the deacons' doors almost always have the archangels. This is Gabriel, and I believe this is Michael over here. Yes, it is. That is almost always the case. I have seen once, I saw a deacon's door in a church that had St. Stephen on it. So there are some variations, but that's almost universal. And they are basically guarding the entrance to heaven. I guess that's how that works. And over here you have St. Barbara and St. Nicholas, and I'm a Nicholas. So that's cool. This is St. Catherine and St. Andrew, the Apostle, who is all of the Greek Orthodox Church's hierarchy is apostolically descended from St. Andrew, if I'm remembering that correctly. Then we have on this bishop's throne here an icon of Christ, vested like a bishop, and the bishop is like the Christ's representative. It might sound controversial if you're Protestant, but if you're Orthodox, that doesn't sound controversial. And on this pulpit here, we have an icon of Christ, and I love this woodwork. It's absolutely beautiful. Another icon of St. John the Baptist, and who do we have over here? And the Mother of God. All of these icons are hand-painted, by the way. This is really beautiful. I'm hoping to show St. John of the Latter Orthodox Church. We're going to have a look inside the altar so I can explain some of the things that are back here. All right, so in every Orthodox church, at least every Orthodox church that I've ever been in, and every Orthodox church I've ever seen pictures of, you have to the left of the altar, you have a table of oblation is what it's called. And this is the place where the Eucharistic elements are prepared. Below this cover is the chalice and paten, and there are 3 chalices, I believe. And it is very common to have an icon of the Nativity of Christ, and you can see here it says Genesis. So, the Nativity of Christ. And obviously a very huge and important thing if you're a Christian at all, whether or not you're Orthodox, but especially if you are, because that is Christ coming to earth, becoming a man, being born as a baby, having that, becoming a human is a really amazing thing, that God became man. And I knew these things when I was a kid and when I was Protestant. It hit different when I became Orthodox, and we'll talk more about that later. And this icon here, as I mentioned, the Mother of God with Christ kind of in front of her, kind of coming out. And then you have St. Stephen, the deacon and first martyr. It says right here, proto-martyr Stephanos. You have some early church fathers, St. Gregory, St. Basil, St. John Chrysostom, and I can't read it at this angle, so we'll read it from the other side. Now I'm going to show a very cool architectural feature here that I would love to see other Orthodox churches emulate. So here we go. There is a secret passage behind the altar, behind this wall where the icons of the church fathers are, is this little passage. And so if you're serving in the altar, and I do serve in the altar a lot, you can go from one side to the other without being seen. So that is a really useful design that I would love to see other churches adopt. It's very cool, very useful. Over here you have St. Romanos, the deacon and hymn composer. Again, the bishop's throne. I love that throne. That the detail of the work is very beautiful.
I forgot to say before, but this is St. Athanasius on the other side.
And then,
on the opposite side of the sanctuary is another niche similar to the table of oblation, but this does not have a specific liturgical function. This icon in the niche is called the Extreme Humility. I just want to pause right here and say something I should have said when I first walked in and forgot about because I was just saying everything from memory without a script. This space is the sanctuary, and this table here is the altar. This is the place where the Divine Liturgy is celebrated. This is where the Eucharist is consecrated. It is the successor of the Holy of Holies in the Old Testament temple.
I meant to say this while I was inside the altar, but I forgot to, so I'm going to say it right now. The altar right there and the space around it is the sanctuary. That is the holiest part of the church. That's where the Eucharist is consecrated, and a big part of the liturgy is celebrated there. Then for communion, the priest comes out through the royal doors, which are closed right now, and people receive communion right here in front of the chancel. So now we're going to talk a little bit about unique features that exist in Greek Orthodox churches in America that you might not see in other churches, although they're not exclusively Greek. And one of those things is pews. You probably saw throughout the video, there are pews all around. And that is a feature that if you go to Greece or any other historically Orthodox country, you're not going to see very many pews or chairs. You might see chairs like we have over here against the walls, but there will be a lot of open floor space. This is I guess an adaptation that was made in the 20th century. I talked about this in a video that I recorded and have thus far, as of right now, not published yet, but I may go ahead and put that online. Some people don't like them. I don't think about them. What else was I going to say? I can't remember. I'm probably going to edit this video. So we've talked about all the major things: the sanctuary, the nave, the cruciform shape of the building. The addition of pews is kind of an American influence. And the Greeks are not the only ones who did this. I've been in Antiochian churches, and even a OCA church in New England have pews. So the Greeks aren't the only ones. And we're going to talk very briefly about another thing that the Greeks do that is not exclusively Greek, but is very commonly Greek, I guess you could say. There is in the choir loft here, which I think having a choir loft is kind of maybe a Western influence, but it's one that I don't have a problem with. There is an organ there. Unfortunately, it's not a pipe organ, but that is another American influence. As I mentioned in a video that I recorded and have not yet published, the community that became St. George rented space from an Episcopal church and became, this is my theory anyway, they became accustomed to having pews and an organ. So when they built their own church, they adopted those things. And that's what I think happened in a lot of places, because as I mentioned before, there's an OCA church in New England and a couple of older Antiochian churches that also have pews. But we'll talk more about that later. Now we're going to go downstairs and we're going to visit the chapel downstairs and talk a little bit about the old church, because the old church that existed before the current church had different furnishings and different style of iconography. The style of iconography you see here, now that I've walked away from it and it's not in focus, this style of iconography is the kind of medieval Byzantine style. What we're going to see downstairs is kind of Renaissance style. So we'll talk a little bit about that in just a few minutes. Also, I'd love to go up to the choir loft and kind of get a bird's eye view, kind of looking down from heaven, because it's very cool up there. It's actually probably pretty warm up there right now, but you know what I mean. Alright, so one of the groups on Facebook that I'm a member of is called Liminal Spaces. And this hallway to nowhere here really feels like a liminal space. I think it was originally supposed to be an organ chamber, but unfortunately that never happened. I mean, it would be kind of small, but you know, it is what it is. Anyway, getting back to the story. Okay, we're in the choir loft, and check out that view.
I used to sing in the choir a lot, and this is the view I got. And I have to say, it's awesome.
Alright, so now, the much anticipated chapel downstairs. This is a very cool space, and I think it deserves some attention. Oh, I'm turning lights off. I'm trying to turn them on. Okay. And what do we get? Is that? Yeah, there we go. So you can see these windows here. These ones are illuminated. These windows are from the old church. This iconography is from the old church, which I talked a little bit about. It is more kind of a Renaissance style. These are hand-painted icons, and I think I remember being told they were painted by monks on Mount Athos early in the 20th century. That says 1936, so that counts as early for me. That is St. Nicholas, and I absolutely love that icon. It's just very cool. It's kind of lifelike, different from Byzantine style, and I'm not dissing either style. They're both very awesome. This kind of style, I believe, was adopted from the West after Greeks were liberated from the Turks. A lot of Byzantine culture had been suppressed, and it took a while to redevelop that. So a lot of iconographers traveled to, I think, Italy and other Western countries to learn Western iconography, basically, and kind of adapt it for Orthodox iconography. And that's what Orthodox Christians used about 100 years ago. Also, the Russian Orthodox Church used to use this style of iconography. So there are lots of Russian Orthodox churches with this kind of Renaissance style iconography. But again, you'll notice, let me stand back over here. Again, you'll notice that this space is laid out almost the same as the church upstairs. It's just smaller. There's a curtain here and not a set of royal doors, but you do have to the right of the royal door, you have the icon of Christ, and then you have the icon of St. John the Baptist, and then you have one of the archangels guarding the deacon's door. Then you have to the left, you have the Mother of God, you have St. George slaying the dragon, which that is a very awesome and kind of dramatic icon. That is very, what is the word? I like it. It's very, I guess dramatic is a good word. This is Archangel Michael, and then to the left you have St. Nicholas, and then you have the Annunciation. And then over on the right, as I mentioned, you have Christ, Pantocrator, then you have St. John the Baptist, St. Gabriel, St. Andrew the Apostle, and then you have the Dormition of the Mother of God. So, like I've said upstairs, once you get past the deacon's doors, these icons are variable. But once you get inside the deacon's doors, closing in towards the center. It seems to be pretty standardized. I've never not seen, every Orthodox church I've ever been in has their icons configured the same way they are here. So that's what I wanted to show. This is basically a smaller version of what you have upstairs. The older iconography is a different style, and and this space is furnished with furnishings like the pews, a lectern, and the iconography. Let me try to focus that a little bit from the old church.
All right, this is going to conclude my tour of St. George, Greek Orthodox Cathedral in Greenville, South Carolina. Thank you for watching. Tune back in for more. Bye-bye now.